Good evening and welcome back to the Triggered Newscast. Today's April 12th, 2019, and today I wanted to talk about Julian Assange. As all of you know, he was arrested yesterday at the Ecuadorian embassy in London, and it's been 7 years long chasing come to a halt. And what's really astounding about the whole thing is the timing, apparently out of nowhere. And what's really interesting is at the close of the Mueller report, we have a lot of evidence that Organization 1, WikiLeaks, was directly involved in the Mueller report. However, they found no culpability of Donald Trump in collusion with Russia, nor with Organization 1 in Russia. And here's what I think is really important about Julian Assange finally being arrested and extradited. Well, the process of extradition is actually still ongoing. It might take a few months, as long as a few years, but I actually think it's going to be rather fast. And the reason I speculate on this is because Julian Assange was directly involved in Hillary Clinton's email scandal. He was the one who posted all of the 33,000 deleted emails, not including some of the more than I think 66,000 additional emails that were found on Anthony Weiner's laptop, and many, many more that were bleach bitted and deleted or smashed on Blackberries. So I think what's really interesting here is obviously WikiLeaks did not dump everything that they could on Hillary Clinton at that time, and they were, even according to Rachel Maddow, they were digging directly into that. They found nothing. So, I think it's interesting. I think that right now Trump might be playing a Trump card. There's a lot of speculation on a lot of other alternative news stations. While I maybe only kind of highlight conspiracy, I don't really delve into it or try and convince anyone of conspiracy. Some of the other channels that I've been watching on Julian Assange have said that he possibly not only has that information about Hillary Clinton, but many other deep state actors. And I don't know if that's necessarily true, but if it were true, it would make sense why now would be the time to take him in. The Mueller report, William Barr's interpretation, its complete release to the public, which is obviously going to include Organization 1 or WikiLeaks, and it's very timely that Julian Assange be arrested now. So I think that part of it might be Trump playing a Trump card, that he's saying, well, if Julian Assange does have any information on Hillary Clinton, anything that's going to turn William Barr around onto the Clinton Foundation, then it's almost like a witness protection. He's already technically been in jail for 7 years, if you think about it. Since 2012, Julian Assange has been locked in one room in the embassy. He's barely come out on balcony. Every once in a while, he comes out on the front porch and he makes a public address, usually regarding his incidents or a late WikiLeaks drop. So I think that he's really already served the time. And I think that maybe people should call, and this is from a journalistic perspective, to be fair and to be objective, there is some culpability in Julian Assange. He did egg Brad Manning or Chelsea Manning on to get more information. He did encourage that person to break the law, and you could say whatever level of crime that is. I'm not sure, because as a journalist or me trying to get information, I would sure pry as much as possible. And I think that the mainstream media does. They just published one of James Comey's classified FBI documents that he leaked to them himself. He's not being arrested for that, and neither is the journalist who published it, even though there was a small debate. It was a brief highlight. One of the reasons why he was definitely fired, and I think he did that right after he was fired, but it's obvious corruption on the left. I think that they're going to be running scared. I think that this might be a tactic to keep Julian Assange alive. And the reason being such that with this turning around right now, him being one of the few key witnesses, the Michael Hastings whose engines blow up, the Seth Riches who end up disappeared, and Julian Assange did not come out right and say that Seth Rich was one of his informants, but it was very obvious, and the way he kept saying, our informants take a great, great risk giving us their information. Right as Seth Rich died, and when he was directly asked by the reporter, he would not even actually deny it. He just said, "We do not disclose any of our sources," and he kept saying it so forcefully, almost from I know he's actually pretty objective, especially after some of his earlier obfuscation and the political spectrum, the judicial spectrum that has been unlight on him, the reasons why he's even hiding the embassy. And it all comes back to this 2010 Brad Manning, Chelsea Manning incident. So obviously, Chelsea Manning already went through the ringer. There was torture. They were making her I think it was a him at the time, sleep on the ground. They were beating him. They were making him sleep without a blanket or pillows on the cold tile. And after all of this brutal treatment, after some of those things came out, his sentence was commuted. He served many, many years less than he should have. He came out, he transitioned to female, became a political politician. I don't know if he's actually gained any success, but this is another real person who whistle blew on something. We're supposed to have protections, and what everyone, including the left right now, making fun of all of this, what they have forgotten is Obama was literally the most oppressive on journalists ever. Again, Michael Hastings, right after the Seth Rich incident, obviously he was trying to leak to journalists who were trying to do something legitimate. I'm sure WikiLeaks wasn't the first place that he tried to go, but that was obviously the only place willing to publish something so vehemently against Hillary Clinton. And the corruption is astounding. It's obvious. James Comey, Loretta Lynch meeting with Bill Clinton on the tarmac, all of these things that are tying behind these deep state. I mean, think about the 2016 election. Why were there no other Democrats to run against Hillary Clinton? It was so void of Democrats that a renowned open socialist third-party candidate, Bernie Sanders, jumped into the Democratic ticket because there was no one else to go against Queen Hillary. And then you look at the Republican side, even though Hillary Clinton had pushed for Donald Trump to run, she was the very one who suggested it. And after he ran, and they were running all the negative ads, and first they were running actually positive ads till he was getting towards the debates. And then they started the hit pieces, pinned him up against, that was one of the largest debate panels I've seen. I think 2020 is going to have that beat on the Democratic side, and I think it's going to be hilarious. But where it's really important thinking about Julian Assange is this is a man who, if you're going to think that what Comey did was legal or illegal as a liberal or as a conservative or as an individual, whatever, if that was illegal, shouldn't that same standard be held against Chad Manning? Well, it was. Or I'm sorry, Chelsea Manning or Brad Manning. It was, and Brad Manning spent time in prison. James Comey hasn't. Hillary Clinton hasn't. Seth Rich, who leaked some of the DNC information, who it's been said has to do with a Russian hack, which is obviously Seth Rich. When he died, that was all throughout the news. It's not even a conspiracy. Michael Hastings breaking some similar issues. His car blows up under suspicious circumstances after he's saying, "They're after me." Obama's Justice Department clamped down on more journalists, and as we've seen, not only have the mainstream media been race baiting, and even Fox News now is almost completely a liberal channel. The Soroses, the Bob Igars, the Jeff Bezos of the world, these guys massively owning companies, they want to tax your farts, but they don't want to tax their own businesses. And Julian Assange has not only information on Hillary Clinton, not only on some of these other people, he's known for going across the spectrum. He's nonpartisan. He's not even just solely against America. He delves into everything, and what he's really interested in are the true, authentic, verifiable conspiracies. Everything that he's ever published, 100% accuracy. CNN can't say that. Washington Post, The Hill, New York Times, beloved Fox, before it's basically CNN. None of these organizations have a perfect record. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she's dead. No, she's not. Sorry about that. Error. That caused a whole controversy. Whoopi Goldberg, dead. Oh, wait, no, she's not. Caused a whole controversy. WikiLeaks publishes Brad Manning, Chelsea Manning, after the change, posts all those military videos of military veterans doing gruesome things and then doing also some heinous things. Some of it was in just real conflict, and some of it was really terrible. And they were just shooting civilians, people on bikes, laughing, making fun of them. It was really disturbing. Well, that was, I think, it was a breach of Brad Manning's military orders to not allow anyone to see that sensitive information. But as a whistleblower for humanitarian reasons, like instead of giving Obama a peace prize for ruining all foreign relations in the Middle East, for nearly starting a nuclear war on the Korean Peninsula, I mean, despite all of his Nobel Peace Prize winning things, what good was truly I don't know. I don't know why Obama got a Nobel Prize. If any of you can tell me in the live chat, I think it would be illuminating for everyone what he did to deserve the Nobel Prize. But Brad Manning giving out the public, not just in America, but worldwide, those military videos. And not all veterans are bad. Most veterans are the most patriotic people you ever meet. Some of the people that the military specifically puts behind the guns to be doing the shooting purposely, psychologically, are metriced out to be the weirdos. So it's not really surprising that when you see these military videos that Brad Manning published, that was then published really via through WikiLeaks. That's what this whole case is about. It goes back to 2010 hacking that Brad Manning did, which technically was just using passwords they didn't even really hack. It was an inside job. He whistle blew the information. He provided it to someone who was a journalist. Now you can say that Julian Assange went overboard, kept asking for the information. You know, that might have been an overstep on what he should have been doing. Obviously, there's federal communications penalties on corporations and journalists for doing things like that. It's not necessarily always prison time. But Brad Manning, before transition to Chelsea Manning, did spend prison time for this. And really, that's an individual who deserves a Nobel Peace Prize. It was so tremendously sad what Brad Manning was going through. No matter if you think it was a traitor or if you think it was whistleblowing, the treatment was so terrible that they commuted the sentence. They let him go, and I don't know if all of the times that they were raping him in the cell, beating him and sticking things in his anus are some of the psychological traumas that caused him to transition in the first place. I don't know if he always had a record. I haven't really followed the whole thing afterwards, because after the initial thing happened and he started transitioning, I'm sorry, it just lost my interest. He was no longer, or she was no longer relevant. Pardon me. So Patty Bly says, I pray Julian Assange brings out what happens to Seth Rich. Well, I think if he goes to court, he won't be able not to. And I think that's actually what's going to be truly damning against the DNC, Hillary Clinton, all of these people, because he's going to be forced to, and his lawyers are probably going to say, it's time that WikiLeaks breaks their silence on their source. It's time we actually tie a true crime to individuals. And I don't think the Seth Rich investigation really ever closed. I mean, I think that they basically announced they haven't figured anything out, but I don't know if it's cold cased and completely forgot about, or they blamed X, Y, and Z. As far as I know, no one's been charged in that crime, and the case is still open. So we'll see what happens there. But I think that Julian Assange, if push comes to shove, he's obviously already spent 7 years in that embassy, 7 years in prison as far as I'm concerned. But if he's going to come back to America, face court, hopefully they're going to consider that mostly as time served, regardless of how you feel of his innocence or guilt. I know many people on the conservative and liberal side are actually split in support, because people feel there's the journalistic side and then people have the political polarization and dichotomy. So no matter where you stand on that issue, the man's already basically served 7 years in prison. I mean, worse than most prisons. He doesn't have the same social, he doesn't have the same connection to the internet. Just for him to get on the internet is a huge deal. That's why he has such a limited ability to put out interviews or information. Usually those have to be prearranged, happen from the balcony or from the front door. The man has basically pooped in the same toilet for 7 years, hasn't had anybody but the same staff at the embassy, I'm sure he loves it when someone retires and someone new gets hired. I mean, if you think about anyone even in a local jail for any amount of time gets to spend more time around different individuals. It's really sad, but he's basically already spent 7 years in jail, and understandably, you could argue that was avoiding his own court date. That was self-imposed. I see that argument, and I think it's a valid argument in some respects. But where I don't think it holds true is there was a lot of other things that they were trying to charge him with that he definitely wasn't involved with. Some of the original reasons for him running away was because they were accusing him of raping some women, that there was a lot of evidence he didn't rape. So he had justifiable reasons to avoid persecution, just like Edward Snowden did. Except Edward Snowden actually did flee to Russia, and what's interesting about that is you haven't heard the Democrats say anything about Edward Snowden or his Russian collusion. You haven't heard him say anything about Uranium One and Clinton Foundation, the Mueller Ranch, the Sugar Pine Mine, all of these incidents directly connected to Hillary Clinton Foundation pay-to-play scandals, Russia in some cases, and many other foreign companies, foreign dignitaries, foreign leaders, George Soroses of the world. She's an obvious globalist. She spent all of her time campaigning for Goldman Sachs, basically. That's where she was getting all of her money. And, you know, these same things, I don't know how many people think Bernie Sanders is part of the deep state. I'm not necessarily accusing him of being part of it, but there's a lot of fishy stuff there. Right after he found out he was cheated on by Hillary Clinton in the DNC, which has a lot to do with the Seth Ridge, has a lot to do with all of these other, the WikiLeaks incident, the Hillary Clinton campaign emails, a lot of this stuff that Seth Ridge put out to Julian Assange that was directly, in a lot of people's, a lot of liberals' eyes, the responsibility and the reason why Hillary Clinton lost the presidency. Why aren't I 50 points ahead, you ask? Well, Hillary Clinton, you're the worst candidate in history. Hey, let's be frank, petite wonders. People like Assange, dangerous to the system that intends to tamp down the truth. I mean, exactly. That's what happened with Michael Hastings, Seth Rich, you know. That was a non-suspicious robbery where they took nothing and killed him right after he was known to be giving away information from the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Podesta emails, all of this stuff. Somehow ended up in WikiLeaks servers, had search engines, everything for people to go through. And, you know, Seth Rich didn't die because of that, obviously. But the information provided was so profound. Obviously, everyone in America thought it was important enough that Miss Hillary Clinton suddenly was 50 points behind and lost the election. Despite the obvious campaign fraud, I don't know how you have more than 100% voters turn out in a district. I don't know how people who've been dead for decades decide to come out and vote. The Democrats are sure winning over everyone, all the extra minority votes. They want the down to 16 votes. They want the illegal votes. They want the foreign votes. You know, but they're the ones turning around saying there's election fraud. And where Julian Assange comes in is he's the one who directly has the evidence that they were the ones with all of the corruption. They were the ones illegally using FISA tap warrants to look into Trump. You know, why do you think suddenly we're seeing Julian Assange arrested? I posit tonight that that's for his safety. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. If you're just stopping in, go ahead and throw down a question in the comments. I'm going to try and address some of your guys' questions before we take off for the evening. And then I'm going to be dropping another video on Ilhan Omar tonight about her recent statements. And I'm going to be highlighting some of the defense given by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other Justice Democrat Party, which is funny that they're the ones being highlighted, Democrats, the fresh new Democrats, protecting and defending Ilhan Omar. So that video is going to be a real short one. I'm going to finish editing it and drop it after this. But now I'm going to go to the comments. If you guys have any input about Julian Assange, Go ahead and throw it down. I'll give you my opinion on it. If you got a question, let me know. So, Petite Wonders. Assange is bought and paid for with a $350 million loan made to Ecuador by the World Bank on April 4th. That is why they cut him loose. Well, I'm not sure he's been cut loose. He was just dragged out of the embassy screaming with all of the liberal media, MSNBC, Rachel Mancow making fun of him. So I'm not exactly sure that he was freed by any sense of the word. But I haven't heard anything about that $350 million loan, and maybe I'll look into that and drop a content piece on it, or talk about it Sunday on that live cast. I do live cast every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. I was doing 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, but I think I'm going to cut back to 7 p.m., which makes it not as late on the East Coast and still late enough to be early enough in Europe. I do have some people in Europe who listen to me on the channel. Not only do I go into American politics and issues, but I'm also doing global geopolitics. I do cover satire, some documentaries about interesting things, conservative ideas. Some of you have seen the recent Candace Owens videos I've dropped, and I love the lady. I got a few more coming on her too. So hopefully you guys have also got to check out the new podcast we've been doing in collaboration with other channels. Me and Let's Be Frank right here in the chat, who runs a great channel himself, are really discussing doing a podcast here soon. Me, Profane News, Rogue Research, I've done several podcasts, and I'm highlighting them at triggerednewscast.com. If you go up to the menu on the top right of the page, you can see the highlighted video section, and that's where all the YouTube content creators, I've highlighted some of their better pieces. I'm going to update it again tonight and add in some of the collaborations. And before I let you guys know, or after the chat, I'll just post it down in the comments on the video after it processes. But the Wright brothers, howdy, brother. Yeah, I'm really interested in also collaborating with you guys. I can't wait. I know that all of us different YouTube collaborators have different perspectives. While we're all conservative leaning or middle ground, I don't think any of us are left leaning. But we all have different unique perspectives. We all drive and make different types of content. If you look through my channel, if you just joined me, you probably have just joined me recently because my channel is literally a month and a half old. So you probably haven't seen most of my stuff. I am brand new, and thanks for checking me out. But I'm also trying to highlight many of the other YouTube content creators who are small but put out good information and good perspectives and good opinions. So check out that website tonight. Maybe Let's Be Frank can drop it down in the live chat while we're still going. Some of his videos are highlighted on that highlighted video section. So it says that Frank dropped his and it's uploading right now. I'm assuming you mean on Ilhan Omar. Yeah, that's some pretty interesting comments. In defense of Ilhan Omar, and not because I like her, not because I agree, we're obviously two completely different religious perspectives there. And I totally don't agree with the Muslim population, what Sharia law stands for. Not necessarily the highlights of their religion, but there's many negative aspects in that book that really, you can't really say, when you say that there's Christian fundamentalists or radicals that do things and violent crimes, there are things in the Old Testament and there's things in the Bible that really, aren't that highlighted as really moral or noble or what you'd expect to be in the Bible. But a lot of those are left in there for tradition, and most of them are part of the first book. But when you look at the Quran, there's substantial portions throughout the whole book where their prophet himself is telling people to kill non-believers of that prophet, of Allah, people who do not practice the way they practice. So, I don't think that but in her defense, I understand that when she meant some people, what she's probably referring to is by trying to say, like, hey, don't say that's all Muslims, that's a group of Muslims. But where that's not really a fair comparison is that would be like saying, okay, well, not all Christians are Mormon, Like, no, all Mormons are pretty Mormon. Mormons and like mainstream Christianity are two completely different things. And in the Muslim belief, there are the Sunni, the Shiites. There's several. Those are the two major schisms within Islam. But there's several others, and there's many other variations of Islam. I'm not sure which version Ilhan Omar even practices. And I understand that in her defense, that's probably what she's trying to mean by it, is like, don't pull me in with all the Muslims. But in truth, those weren't like radical Muslims. They were, in essence, that they did the acts, that they planned it out, carried it out. There's many conspiracies about all that. If you believe the official story, more power to you. If you believe that the aliens were in it with George Bush, more power to you. Uh, I don't know where I stand on all that. I wasn't convinced by the official story, but I'm not convinced by all the alternative stories either. I think it'll take probably the rest of my lifetime for the truth to come out on 9/11. I mean, you can call anyone crazy, but the first responders, the police and the firefighters, are some of the biggest people in the movement against the official story. So I'll just leave it at that. There's plenty of documentaries about all of that. And so in her defense, I think maybe she was trying to spin it that angle, but you really can't spin it that way. Those those people were just devout Muslims. You couldn't call them really radicals or fundamentalists. You couldn't say they were misdrewing the Quran. They were just Muslim literalists. They were just following the Quran. So I don't know if I think I get why she was trying to say it the way she said it, but even the audience didn't give her a good reaction. So I'm going to be dropping a video about that. It's pretty hilarious to watch Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez try and defend her. But let's go ahead and jump into the questions back on topic having to do with Assange. Again, if you guys have seen the tags or the description for the video, I'm kind of looking at a lot of angles of where Assange ties into Clinton, the deep state, the Clinton Foundation, the Mueller report, Chad Manning, Brad Manning or Chelsea Manning, Michael Hastings, Seth Rich, some of these other huge things that went down. So if you guys have any questions, my live chat's finally just really refreshing. Throw it down there and I'll read it off and try and answer. And then I think I'll jump off here in a few minutes. So let's see what the chat's got going. Nothing different than the Washington Post publishing the Pentagon Papers. Yeah, it really isn't. It really isn't. Great job. We got Deborah's a Mormon. Yeah, I think we should do a whole podcast just on the Mormon religion. There's a lot of really interesting things there. It might actually be something I do on my other channel, because that other channel covers more esoteric topics, masonry, things like that, history. So it's not really quite on the news. So maybe if you check me on the other channel, Deborah, we'll go over some of that. But I think what I'm going to do is release that Ilhan Omar video directly after this. I don't think my live chat completely refreshed when some of you were in here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it here. And thanks again for stopping in. This is the Triggered Newscast. And we'll see you Sunday night at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time.